Well, I was initially hesitant to make this video because the content creator in question seems to be insecure at times and does tend to get fairly reactive when confronted with opinions or perspectives uh, from different people and that differ from their own. Uh, so I didn't want to tread on that if they're having problems, but they did post this recently.
I'm so fucking sick of people saying people are being abusive when they're just in conflict. Like, bro, we've gotten to a point in society where it's just like, your feelings are hurt and now you've been abused. So someone is, hurt your feelings and they're an abuser. Like, fuck off. like, I'm gonna cancel this person because they said shit to me behind my back. They're abusing me. It's like, no, they're just talking shit behind your back, bro. Everyone does it. Like, what are you talking about?
Given that sentiment, uh, it appears that they feel that criticism and even criticism on another venue than they're speaking is just part of culture in general, and that they're okay with it. So, given that, it appears my discussion of their content would be fair play by their standards. So, in the words of the great Yogi Bear, away we go, boo boo. The video I'll be talking about is Old Dead White Guys. That's the title of the video, which is a common expression or trope for the criticism that literary or historical canon is dominated by old dead white guys, a classical period looking at kind of a Eurocentric and androcentric uh, view of the world, which certainly can have merits. Uh, but in the video, the creator does make some statements and analyses which are some of the statements are factually incorrect, and some of them I believe to be biased, myopic, and unfair. Uh, I'm not the only one that has had pushback on this, though it does appear that anybody who comments on it with a differing opinion does get their comments taken down on their channel. So I decided to address these on my own venue. Uh, and people are welcome to comment on that. Uh, there, again, I'm not the only one to have noticed these things. So by no means are my um, critiques or insights original or particularly super insightful. In fact, for the factual things, they're quite apparent. Excuse me. Uh, I will attempt not to and ah too much. I did have to clear my throat. My apologies. I'm still suffering from some health problems.
Hi, everybody. It's Mouse. And we're going to talk about divisive topic.
Well, I think that's fair, and being that it's a divisive topic, there's going to be varying opinions. So at least they're open to that. That's going to be part of the show.
I'm tired of everything going back to white guys. White people's shit. What does that mean? Like the Anglo-centric nature of history. I'll give you an example. I have no mouth and I must scream. It inspired the Amazing Digital Circus, and I know a little bit about I have no mouth and I must scream. I've seen a lot of gameplay video of the game that was made based on the book. Anyways, I finally.
One thing to correct her on there is that my apologies. I don't really know what their pronouns are, so my apologies for that. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is not a book. It's a short story originally written for one of the periodicals about 67, I believe. It won a Hugo. I don't Yeah, Mono Hugo. But it's really clocks in at only 12 or 13 pages. It is not a book length work, which I think affects the focus of the story, its purpose, and some of the things that will later be addressed.
Listen to the audiobook of it, and it's kind of shit. Not gonna lie, it's just shit. It's not great. It's like torture porn, and it's just not really even that good, honestly. And it's just not really even that good, honestly. It's just weird torture porn, to be honest.
I think that torture porn is an unfair and inaccurate criticism because it really doesn't address what Ellison's purpose was and is. And in a lot of his reading, tends to be a very almost abrasive writer at times. And I think in his own words, he describes it. This is actually about I have no mouth and I must scream.
I put things in everything I do that are intended to rattle the cage, stir the soup. People say, well, you only write to shock. Duh. Yeah, okay. I mean, that is a noble endeavor, to shock. I mean, there are already enough people in the world who will put you to sleep with their assurances. No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about skinheads. Don't worry about fascism. Don't worry about the Ku Klux Klan. Don't worry about the far right. None of these things really matter. Everything is fine. That is not the way the world runs.
So that's really what his intent is. It's not titillation. He tends to expose the horrors of things and create a strong visceral reaction. It's more, I would class it more, and again, now this is an analysis. We'll get to some factual incorrect things a little later. But I would say it's more body horror than torture porn, in that the torture of the computer AM is not meant to titillate, but is meant to disgust, because it is the antagonist of the story that is doing that he will later describe as mad, as an insane.
Honestly, it's just weird torture porn, to be honest. And like all the depth that I ever hear about I have no mouth and I must scream is like lacking. I know it's expanded in the video game, which the author was heavily involved with, which definitely like is a little bit more interesting. But I still don't think it's like great. It's not great. It's still okay. There's better fiction involving, like, I think the fan canon, the fan theories and stuff around I Have No Mouth and I'm a Scream, especially in tandem with The Amazing Digital Circus, is better as a whole than I Have No Mouth and I'm okay. So what does this have to do with getting tired of white?
Well, again, this is where I think the length of the story matters. It is a 10-page short story, about 12 pages, short story. I did have an edition one time that was about 10. But it's about a 12-page short story written in a single night, according to Harlan Ellison.
I wrote I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream in one night, in one blue-white fit of passion. I sat down at a typewriter like Captain Nemo sitting down at his organ. I did Toccata and Fugue in D minor, and the next day, lo and behold, there was I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, and it's remained virtually unchanged from that first draft all the years that it has existed. And it's now one of the 10 most reprinted stories in the English language. It's taught in hundreds of universities.
My apologies for not having the video up, but that it was written in one night isn't to excuse any lack that the story may have, but I think it does talk to, really what the scope of the work was. The science fiction short story in general, especially, in those times, were very, very focused. You get in and you make you explore one concept, and then you get out. It's not. Often they'll be expanded into larger works. We've seen that with City in the Stars. Ender's Game has had, boy, a short, I think, a novella, and then a full novel, and then onto a series. Sentinel eventually got expanded into 2001 Space Odyssey, or at least used as the seed work for that. So I think the criticism that it is doesn't have particular depth, I would argue that it doesn't have particular breadth, because it's a fairly cutting concept, and the fact that it has depth is what I think allows for the fans to use that as a seed work and move on from there, either through analysis or making derivative works, or borrowing that overall structure. It's a very, very focused work.
So what does this have to do with getting tired of white people shit? Anglo-centric view of history. Well, it's a white author. It's a white guy. It's a 60s incel from the 60s. It was long since passed. Like in 2013 he died. He was like in his 80s.
Well, this is where the narrative gets factually inaccurate. And this is where I've seen a number of the pushbacks that people have had, and I think some of what has created the division. It really doesn't have to do with the concept of the old dead white guy. That's a concept that certainly one could argue, and it could have certainly a valid position. But describing Harlan Ellison first as an incel is completely and factually incorrect. He was married, I believe, 5 times. Early on in his life, there were very short marriages, I think. But the last marriage was over 30 years, and it ended only upon his death. So he did have a long time marriage, and had a number of romantic partners, and even has been attributed to saying he has had 500 sexual partners. That was apparently disclosed to one of his girlfriends, who asked whether that's, again, being it to a girlfriend, I don't think it would be braggadocio to other people, but is it an exaggeration? I don't know. That's a self-report. But given the marriage and his overall track record, labeling Ellison as an incel, just not correct. I think that's done more to disparage and belittle, and to villainize. Now that's my interpretation of this commentator, this content creator. But this content creator has mentioned that they are a hater and calls themselves an asshole with regard to these sorts of things. So I think it's at least has some basis, though the label of incel, as to the motivation, though the label of incel as a fact is just incorrect. As far as white guy, Harlan Ellison being a white guy, well, that's the Whoopi Goldberg problem. Harlan Ellison was a Jew, and he was born in 1934, and that puts him at right about 11 years old when VE Day, when the European part of World War II ended, which is significant because when you think about it, from 6 or 7 to 11 years old, he, when you're really coming into awareness, he was experiencing a world where a massive military power was looking to put his people into ovens, people like him into ovens. So consider that. Mom, can I have some chocolate? No, we're on rations. Why are we on rations? Well, you see, there's a bunch of people with really, really big guns that want to cook us in ovens. That's, the world he grew up in. And he has claimed to, have experienced anti-Semitism during his school time, which, that was his self-description. I don't doubt that. Even though we were fighting Germany, anti-Semitism was around. After all, we did get into Germany, dragged into World War II because of the Pearl Harbor attack. Before that, we were maybe some distant aid, but we were somewhat laissez-faire on that issue. Which I could certainly see ringing out. In fact, it was a major part of his works, much like maybe, I know the content creator has mentioned being transgender, and that, that the trans experience is a major part of their lives, and that they, that colors or is included in their own creative works, and how the lens through which they see reality. And the same goes, to be fair, the same goes for Ellison. In fact, he speaks about this briefly.
I use the trope of the Holocaust frequently in my work, and when someone says, well, it's going to trivialize it because it's in a game, Nothing can trivialize the Holocaust. I don't care whether you mention it in a comic book, on bubblegum wrappers, in computer games, or write it in graffiti on the wall. Never forget. Never forget. And putting it in this game is intended to annoy people, to shock people, to upset people. He's the assistant to the butcher Mengele, and he is a man who has allowed to happen or has personally performed some of the most hideous acts that a human being can perform. And is there salvation for him within the confines of this game? Well, that's an interesting question too that the game will answer.
So Ellison's identity is staunchly and solidly Jewish. Now, he did self-describe and self-identify as an atheistic Jew, which, of course, wouldn't matter to the Nazis or to other supremacists and so forth. But it's not just in the context of this story. This is something that is just part of Ellison's overall identity. We can see that
little compromises that everybody makes in life. I consider myself an enormously lucky person because very early on in life, I got put in a hard place where I had to find out whether or not I would give.
Where was that?
It was the first time I was called a kike. Was in Champion Junior High School. Well, no, actually, it was before that. It was in Lathrop Grade School in Paynesville, Ohio, a really loathsome place. And kid called me a kike, and he was a big guy.
Tall.
Oh, everybody was tall. I was a dwarf, I'm a troll, man. I represent the Lollipop Guild, the Lollipop Guild. And here I was, come on, put him up, I attack his knee, and guy just beat at me like a Hong Kong gong, man. I mean, it was dreadful, but I had to do it. And if you once get put into a position where you can't weasel, where you really have to make the decision and you have to go or no go, then you find out whether you've got it or not. And I did that, and I don't consider it any great mark of courage. It's just
What'd you do? Did you pop him?
Oh yeah, I went at it. I went at it. They carried me off the playground, but I went at it, and I've been doing that ever since. And it's just.
It's nice to see you again.
It's good to see you.
You don't look Goyish at all. I mean, the Goyim, what do they have to worry about? That maybe the Wonder Bread shipment is a little late. That's all. Anyhow, let me see. I wrote a story.
You ever hear the bells on Christmas Day?
Don't start.
Goyim. Goyim.
You want to hear a fast joke? Fast joke.
Well, I thought you said a crass joke.
No. Fast joke. It's clean, too. It's clean.
Okay.
They discovered there's life on Mars. They didn't know it because they're living underground, right? But they've been getting old reruns of I Love Lucy, so they send out words, send a typical human being. We're going to send out a typical Martian. We want to establish relations. So the human race presented with this incredible problem. Who do they send? Do they send, President Carter? Do they send Albert Schweitzer? They send Mike Wallace to interview her for 60 minutes. So he comes out of Mars, and the ground opens up like that, and out comes a little Martian. He's 2 feet tall. He's green. He's got one eye in the middle of his forehead. He's got a little stalk antenna. He's wearing a propeller beanie. So he comes across, and Wallace is trying to be cool. He says, hello, and the Martian says, hello, how are you? He says, are you a typical Martian? He says, yeah. He says, are all Martians green? He says, yeah. He says, yeah. Some are a little more toward yellow, some a little more toward aqua, but basically we're all green. He says, you all got the one eye in the middle of forehead? He says, yeah. Some have a watery, some have an astigmatic. We all got the one. And the little eye, yeah, you know, we all get there. He says, you all wear the little propeller beanie? He says, not the goyim.
That's just really to explore how Ellison didn't really experience the world as quote-unquote white guy. There's a division between the Jews and, as he puts it, the goyim. And it was an ever-present division there that he faced. So calling him just a white guy, I don't think is really fully accurate.
Peddling smut at the end of his life, honestly. It's kind of interesting if you look into it. But anyways, he
smut is a little bit of I think, a subjective term, which I think has some problems in this context. Ellison always, from his time in New York at 21 years old and on, would occasionally write erotica, but it was often, within a not always a science fiction context. Certainly sometimes. He was the editor of, he edited collections called Dangerous Visions. There was number 1, and then I think more Dangerous Visions. The last Dangerous Visions, the third one, these were his anthology series with some of the heavyweight names in science fiction that were sexual or political, The last one was posthumous, and I think J. Michael Straczynski, who is the executor of the Ellison estate, actually did that. There's some criticism people have about if it was Ellison's visions in terms of editing, but those were actually some groundbreaking stories, and they're quite highly regarded if you look at the Goodreads or Amazon reviews or what have you. And he also wrote, what was it? Love Ain't Nothing But Sex Misspelled. That's and other works. It's basically his own short story collections. But I think that came out, gosh, I want to say 74, 75, somewhere in there. So he, I think the idea that he wrote smut at the end of his life, some of these were published and republished, but they actually, if you read them, they're quite a bit of social commentary. He was also an essayist quite a bit, and as you can probably see from some of the interviews or parts, he was sort of a pull no punches kind of writer. Would tend to challenge his audience, and that included issues like sexuality. Like I remember one of the stories in Dangerous Visions, actually dealt with the objectification and kind of the erotic worship of these androgynous astronauts who have been kind of altered. That one wasn't Ellison, but it was the Ellison edit. These are socially challenging issues he dealt with, and I do think it is a bit unfair to just call it smut. After all, the content creator in question has been open about being an on-camera sex work performer in the past. And I think that was earlier on, but Ellison was writing these stories in his 20s on, so somebody who's doing on-camera sex work in their 30s or maybe 40s, I think calling the fictional literary work smut, is a bit judgmental, in the context of the other works, their own works. And that's not to shame sex work or whatnot, but I just think it speaks to setting the scaling, correctly. And I think in this case, smut is just a way of, again, then this is just an interpretation again of belittling the author and the author's works. Again, the content creator in question has openly self-described as a hater. So I think that may be part of the hate.
Circus. Like, The Amazing Digital Circus, inspired by I Have No Mouth and I'm a Screen, is a work of trans queer fiction which transcends I Have No Mouth and I'm a Screen by a lot. I think The Amazing Digital Circus is way better and like well thought out, and the perspective that Gooseworks puts into it obviously comes from a queer trans vantage point, which is very good and gives a lot more nuance, I think, than some angry white incel from the 60s is going to have on this personhood and individuality and character studies and all that shit.
Well, I think the problem there is, again, the content creator being trans themselves relates more to the trans experience and is also involved in that sort of art style anime and things. And that, I think, affects that overall perspective. An angry cishet white guy, well, as we were talking about Ellison, certainly there's anger is mentioned. He marched with Martin Luther King. He knew Octavia Butler so well and counseled her on writing her stories, getting her out of screenplays, which he said she wasn't really her strong point, and into writing novels. Knew her so well and helped her along. Called her Eleanor by her middle name. So helped Octavia Butler. One of the landmark black authors. Did some wonderful stuff. Bloodchild is an absolute classic, and covers the black experience and often relates through in a sci-fi context, slavery and various forms of social oppression from there. And that's something that, Ellison was involved with. If you go back and listen to parts of the interview, he was talking about his confrontational nature and how he doesn't lie down on the various things, white supremacists and the Klan and so forth. And even his childhood story where he got his ass kicked, but did stand to it. I think speaks to not just being a white guy. And as far as the anger, there's some of that. And I think we also have to remember that he was diagnosed with both depression and bipolar. I don't know if it was one or two, or even if the classification happened at that time. But which affected his work and his relationships. So it's not just, I think, anger out of nowhere. And as far as the idea that that I have no mouth and I must scream, dealing with nuanced things about what did they mention? Identity and individuality, things of this nature. Well, that really isn't necessarily, a 12 page. My old copy was 10 pages, just bigger pages, I think, smaller print, is really designed to do. Here's Ellison's take just on the basics of it.
The computer, AM, is demented. It's demented because the flaws in the humans who programmed AM have shown up in the computer. And as a consequence, its madness, its paranoia, its hatred of humanity manifests itself in a way that eventually leads it to destroy the entire human race. And because it is trapped in the center of the earth, because it has this giant intellect and can do nothing with it, it is forever a prisoner in its own madhouse. Am brings the last 5 people left on Earth, saves them, saves those 5 people, and brings them down below to the center of the Earth, so that Am can torment them endlessly through all eternity, makes them almost immortal, so that their torment never ceases, and in that way Am amuses itself.
So I think there, in a short story context, we see, I think, a very much more focused idea of what what the story is about. Certainly could be expanded. As the content creator mentioned, other people have taken their own interpretation and expanded on that. But the story itself is based on Am. Now many people have, and this is where it gets interpretive, but I am, and I won't belabor the point with the more video, but Ellison has described on many interviews that AM, is starts off as Allied Master Computer, and I think it goes through a couple of different things in the various works, but like the game, but that it's kind of a double entendre that it's am, I am. As in cognito ergo sum, I think therefore I am is how he has mentioned, as he described it. And that I am. Well, that's what Yahweh means. So, in a certain way, it's an angry God. And Ellison was an atheist, and I've seen a couple of interviews before, read a couple of interviews where he discusses about it being the folly of having an omnipotent God. So it's a critique on that philosophical construct and the problems with it, especially a mad God like we have here. So I think that the idea of it not being particularly nuanced is in some way right, because again it's a 13-page story, but that doesn't I think make it a low quality piece of literature. It's a hard driving concept, as Ellison would often do. Now, I certainly don't mean to be an apologist for Ellison's behavior, even with the mental illness and the experience of being part of a community that was hunted and killed. He still is often described as in very negative terms, a dick, asshole, these kinds of things. A very abrasive character, and a lot of people found him to be an abusive personality. But to hang it on being an angry, rich, white, incel, cishet person, I think is fairly reductionist, and isn't even factually correct in a number of ways, I think, as I've explained. Even in his writings, he's mentioned in his interviews, his writing style is he considers his audience often adversaries, which isn't supposed to be a negative term, that he hates it. He quote unquote hates his audience, or despises, I believe is the word he uses, despises his audience. It's more, I think, about challenging the audience, in that he's not there to be your friend. The content creator that criticizes him tends to describe wanting an environment that's comfy and cozy, are two of the big words they use for their media production and their style. Ellison is a polar opposite to that, so that part might not resonate with the content creator in terms of approach, but I don't think that really says that it's low quality work. He has a fairly large body of work that's been very well received, and some of his works are considered seminal. Well, for instance, even the creator of The Amazing Digital Circus sees the work, apparently describing their work as inspired by, as seminal to their own work. So there's that. There are a few other points in the video, I think, that I take a little bit of exception to, such as classifying Andy Warhol as just a quirked up white dude, where the thing about Andy Warhol was he definitely was not het. Cis even, he was. That's a tough one, because you've probably seen his, or maybe not, but he did explorations in drag and whatnot, which at the time isn't the nightclub performance we're talking about, but it has projects with gender bending, as the term was at the time, and at the time Warhol was around. AIDS, AIDS had come about, but it was originally known, even in the CDC, as GRID, gay-related immunodeficiency. And he was very involved in culture. That the factory was a major outpost in development for a number of artists that we could all consider queer. I think in many ways, Warhol was in an environment, and part of his identity was very queer in ways that I don't think were even well defined at the time. Both in the sort of social classification sense we use now, and in even the literal sense of the strange, and it was, I think, instrumental in how that how that came about, and how that subculture, as a subculture, was could be brought to the fore. Not that there was an existence before that, certainly. There is but if it was at the fore, there's a good literary analysis, Queering the Medieval Genre. It's a fairly academic text, but it describes even in medieval works and along the lines of the Chaucerian era of queer themes, but that of course had to be encoded cryptically in the work, so that to avoid persecution. So it's not to say that queer identities didn't exist at that time, but I don't want to go too far afield on that. I think the Warhol example of merely being a quirked up white dude is also a bit unfair. But that may be born from the creator's own frustrations. It does seem when they have financial stress that it does tend to affect their overall outlook. So there is that. That's not to disparage overall frustration. I think we can all get that. But I did want to cover some treatment that I thought was, well, some of it, again, inaccurate, and others of it I think was sort of a biased interpretation. But thank you so much for listening.